Africa faces acute energy challenges with the lowest electrification rate of all the regions, at about 42% of households, compared to a world average of 81%. It is 99% in North Africa, but only about 32% in sub-Saharan Africa. Without access to energy services, the poor are deprived of one of the most basic economic opportunities needed to improve their standard of living. Professor Barton-Naji has just said that there is hope for Africa in connection with the supply of electricity. But it appears this hope is based primarily on what is coming from outside Africa. African leaders have lately been looking toward China, the United States, and Europe for help and even for validation of their own programs. It has become clear that Africa's wide infrastructure deficit problem will take decades to overcome. So China appears to have seized the initiative on this. China is now building infrastructure all over Africa. It is building roads and dams and ready to build other facilities. Since it appeared the West would not build infrastructure as a matter of policy, China jumped in, perhaps opportunistically, to provide low-interest loans to build electric power, roads, rail, and others. Perhaps this is what has triggered something in Washington, as President Barack Obama has now come out in a big way. From August 4th to the 6th of 2014, President Obama held a meeting in Washington, D.C. of about 50 African countries. The goal of the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit appears to be aimed at strengthening America's economic foothold in Africa by taking U.S. ties with Africa beyond humanitarian aid toward more constructive economic partnerships. At the meeting, President Barack Obama announced about $37 billion altogether in new commitments, with the bulk of it from private sector companies. Africa's energy sector got about $14 billion of these new pledges, bringing funding for the Power Africa program to more than $26 billion. But okay, if not to depend exclusively on China and America, the BRICS countries, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, had already held a meeting on July 15, 2014 in Brazil, alongside the World Cup, to set up a new development bank that will provide low-interest loans to African and other developing countries to boost their infrastructural base. This basically means that soon, participating African and other developing countries may become less dependent on multilateral systems like the IMF and the World Bank, or even on bilateral aid from rich Western countries. But one thing aid from these Western-oriented systems have typically required and promoted is efficient use of the aid and overall good governance. Regardless of the sources of the resources to build the energy base and other infrastructure, Africa must demonstrate the ability for allocative efficiency. I believe that Africa can do it, so the time has come for Africa to prove it. I'm Magnus Kpakol, and that's my view.
Hello.